graph in standard form, what we were doing before is we were looking at slope-intercept form, and that's when the y is by itself. And we either did a table or we were graphing with our slope and y-intercept. Standard form is when x and y are on one side of the equation and c or our constant values on the other. It is never in fractions or decimals if it's in true standard form. And the easiest way to graph standard form is using the intercepts, our x-intercept and our y-intercept. Now, our x-intercept always is on the x-axis, and our y-intercept is always on the y-axis. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to find our x and y-intercepts, and we're just going to draw a straight line through it. Now, how we do that is our x-intercept is always an x value and then 0 for y. And our y-intercept is always a 0 for x, and then what we have is our y value. So if we look at our general standard form equation, when we plug in a 0 for the y, in order to get the x by itself, we divide by a, and that's how we get the c over a. Or if we're trying to find the y-intercept, we plug a 0 in for the x, and in order to get the y by itself, we divide by b, and we get c over b. So this is just the general formula. The best way to do it is just to plug in the zeros and find our values. So let's look at our first example. Finding the x and y intercepts. I'm going to start with the x-intercept. So I'm going to plug in a 0, and I get 5x equals 10. I'm going to divide it by 5, and I get x equals 2. So I have my x-intercept 2, 0. Now, in order to find the y-intercept, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug a 0 in for the x. So that means y is equal to 10. So what I have is the ordered pair 0, 10. And that right there would be my answer. Let's look at the next one. For this one, I'm going to find my x-intercept by plugging a 0 in for the y. So I get 2x equals 12. I divide it by 2. X is equal to 6. So I have the ordered pair 6, 0. Now, when I'm finding my y-intercept, I plug a 0 in for the x. I get negative 7y equals 12. I divide it by negative 7. And that gives me y is equal to negative 12 sevenths. And usually when I write it as an ordered pair, I write it as a mixed number because it's easier to plot. So that would be negative 1 and 5 sevenths. Now for the next one, what I want you to do is pause the video and try that on your own. So looking at letter C, in order to find the x-intercept, we plug in the 0. 2x equals 12. We divide it by 2. X is equal to 6. So that would be 6, 0. And then when we're finding our y-intercept, we plug a 0 in for the x. We get 3y equals 12. We divide it by 3. Y is equal to 4. So I have the ordered pair 0, 4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find our x and y intercepts, and we're going to use those to graph. So looking at the first one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plug in a 0 in for the y, and that gives us 2x equals 4. We divide it by 2. X is equal to 2. So I have the ordered pair 2, 0. For my y-intercept, I plug in a 0 in for the x, so I get y equals 4. So that would be 0, 4. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my two intercepts, I'm going to plot them, and then I'm going to draw a straight line. So 2, 0 would be right here. 0, 4 would be right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my line through those 2 points. Let's look at the next one. So I'm going to plug in my 0 in for the y. I get 2x is equal to 10. I divide it by 2. And so x equals 5, which would be 5, 0. Then what I'm going to do is find my y-intercept. In order to find my y-intercept, I plug in a 0 in for x. So I get negative 5y is equal to 10. I divide it by negative 5. And y is equal to negative 2. So I have 0, negative 2. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take those 2 ordered pairs and I'm going to graph them. Now the problem is that 5, 0 doesn't fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my y-axis over so that way it does fit. So in that case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for 0, negative 2, it would be right here. And I'm going to draw my straight line. Okay, what I want you to do is pause the video and try that next one on your own. So looking at letter C, once again, in order to find our x-intercept, we plug in a 0 for y. I'm dividing it by 2. So 2, well, if I divide it by 2, that gives me x is equal to 3. So then I have the ordered pair 3, 0. For the next one, I'm going to plug in my 0 in for the x. So I divide it by 4. X is equal to 6 fourths, which I'm going to reduce to 3 halves. I'm going to write it as a mixed number because that's a little bit easier to plot. And I should not put an x. It should be a y. So I have 0 and 1 and 1 half. Once again, just in case you forgot, 2 goes into 3 one time. That's where we're getting the 1, and then there's a remainder of 1 left over. So when I graph this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my 3, 0. And then I'm going to plot my 1 and a half. And 1 and a half is in between 1 and 2. And I should put a little red dot so we clarify. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my straight line.